Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've done a live stream. I'm kind of nervous. Oh, I ran out of water. Forgot to fill up my water. I hope you're all doing well. I'm not sure if this is actually working or not. hopefully you can hear. Today, I wanted to share a couple of things with you. One, some Livy. I've been telling all my students and every single person that I run into that you have to read Livy. Livy is absolutely magical. He writes about the history of Rome. I really loved the first 5 books of Rome's history. That's like 750 BC to the Gauls invasion, 300 something. Sorry, excuse me. Let me grab some water and I'll be right back. I'm going to leave you. I'm going to let them leave you. I'll be right here. And there's 5 of you here. Oh my gosh. Let me just go grab some water. My throat's a little scratchy. How funny. Start a live stream and then just leave. Let me tell you the point of these live streams. I'd really like to come and bother you all a little bit more frequently, have some music bubble time together. I came across some videos, some live streams on YouTube of just musicians playing and saying, I hope this blesses you for the day. I hope you find some peace in this little concert. This will not be a concert. This is me just trying to noodle through something that I like rather unpreparedly. But I just wanted to hold some space for you to have some music and then for us to read a little bit of history or read a little story or something. And then, call it a day. So let me start with a little bit of Bach. And there's a leaf blower outside just in time. So this is Bourrée 1 and 2 from Bach's Cello Suite number 4, I believe. Just make sure. Yeah, I just really like it. I think it's beautiful. I hope it gives you some peace and you'll see that it's not going to be perfect. And it's not about that. It's just about, enjoying playing something beautiful, having some time with your instrument. And I just, like I said, I'm not really sure about the sound. If the sound is not good, please let me know. That's close enough. Is the sound okay? Hopefully it's all right. We'll see. Okay. Well, I keep messing up in that one spot. Let me mark that one little spot there. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a little bit of Bach Suite 4, Beret 1 and 2. I just really love those. I just feel that musicians should take over the internet for the next few months. Just playing music, just having fun, and providing some music bubble time for the world. So I will try to do that. So I wanted to share a little story time with you. This is from Livy's History of Rome, then the Italian Wars from book 6 through 10. And there's like, as you can see, it's been heavily studied. And I've marked some things where he talks about the arts. Because as you know, the arts was actually a big part of Rome and Greece and the ancient world. And it was partly because they used the arts to in their religious ceremonies. So music in the religious ceremonies was so important. In fact, you couldn't have a proper religious ceremony without music. And there's a story about the flute players going on strike, and so they have to figure out how to get the flute players back because they can't do any religious ceremonies without them. So we'll save that for another day. But today we're going to be taking a look at the history of theater in Rome. So this is in the year 365, 364 BC. And wouldn't you know it, it starts with a plague. So I just want you to think about our most recent plague, where everybody took to TikTok and was dancing around and they were kind of making up these funny little things. Everybody went to TikTok. And they did that in antiquity as well. They just didn't have TikTok. So I'm not sure why my voice has gotten so scratchy recently. I apologize for any of you that are bothered by my scratchy voice, but I will try to not be scratchy. Let's jump in. So this is in book 7 of Livy's History of Rome. And he says, "The plague continued throughout this year and the next, which was the consulship of Gaius Sulpicius Pectus and Gaius Licinius Stolo." They had 2 consuls, one to stay in the city if there was a war, and then one to take the army out if there was a war. So anyway, in that period, there was no event worthy of record, apart from the holding of a lectisternium, which was where they were trying to appease the gods because there was a plague, and so they laid a table and a couch for the gods in hopes that that would placate them and they'd be happy with them again. So that was very rare for them to hold one of those things. It says it's the 3rd since the city's foundation in order to appease the gods. When the violence of the epidemic did not abate either through human remedies or divine intervention, people's minds were overwhelmed with religious fear. Then, they say, theatrical performances were introduced as one of the means of appeasing the anger of heaven, a strange recourse for a bellicose people, for the only spectacle that had been known to them was circus games. But these too, like almost everything, had small beginnings, and what is more, they also came from abroad. With no singing and no action representing the content of songs, dancers imported from Etruria would dance to the measures of a flute player, producing movements in Etruscan fashion that were not without charm. So they were dancing to just instrumental music, flute music. Then the young people began to imitate the dancers, while at the same time they would throw out jokes amongst themselves in unpolished verse, and their movements were not out of keeping with their diction. The phenomenon became accepted, and repeated practice raised its quality. Home-produced practitioners were given the name histriones. Histriones? Ister being Etruscan for dancer. But these no longer threw out in alternation primitive impromptu compositions, as happened before. Instead, they put on medleys filled with musical airs and with lyrics now scripted for performance, accompanied by the flute and appropriate choreography. It was Livius, not Titus Livius, grandfather Livius, he is now affectionately called. It was Livius who, some years later, took the initiative to move away from writing medleys and to add a plot to his performance. Naturally, like all at the time, he was the performer of his own compositions, and it is said that because he was repeatedly called upon for encores, he strained his voice. He was then granted permission to place a boy in front of the flute player to do the singing, and that way he could act out what was sung with somewhat more vigorous movements, because he was not now restricted by using his voice. After that, actors began to have singing done for them, and only spoken parts were left for their voices. When such rules were applied to plays, and there was a movement away from laughter and boisterous jesting, the young men left comedic acting to the professional actors and began to go back to the ancient practice. I love this. Any of you comedy lovers out there, the ancient practice of hurling at each other banter fashioned into verse. It was from this that what were later called exodia came into being, and these were usually attached to Atlan, Atlan farces, it says. This type of show, which was borrowed from the Oskins, the young men kept as their own and did not allow it to be sullied by professional actors. So, hence the established custom that actors of Atellan farces are not removed from their tribes, and that they perform army service, just as if they had no connection with the stage. I'm almost done. Bear with me. It seemed to me that the origins of entertainments ought to be set on paper, along with the humble beginnings of other institutions. Then it might become apparent how sound the beginnings were of something that has reached this pitch of madness where it can barely be supported by wealthy kingdoms. Nevertheless, the very first, if you only knew Hollywood today, it's just funny. Let me just read that again. So it seems to me that the origins of entertainments ought to be set on paper, along with the humble beginnings of other institutions. Then it might become apparent how sound the beginnings were of something that has reached this pitch of madness, where it can barely be supported by wealthy kingdoms. Nevertheless, the very first production of stage performances, the purpose of which was religious expiation, did nothing to alleviate religious fears in minds or the sickness in bodies. And it goes on. So anyway, that's on page 58 and 59 from the Oxford World Classics, Livy's Rome, Italian Wars, book 6 through 10. So anyway, now you know the history of theater in Rome, not in Greece, in Rome. It developed out of a time when they were dealing with a terrible plague, and it was to appease the gods. Like so much of our, like we were talking about before, so much of our arts initially were for our religious ceremonies. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed coming to bother you today and just check in and see how you're doing. I always love reading your comments. Thank you so much for keeping up with all of my videos here, and this channel keeps growing little by little every year, which is amazing. And I'd really like, if I have the time to come and see you on Fridays, just for a little music time and maybe a little story time, and a cup of tea time, and hopefully bring you some more joy in your day. So, and let me just read your comments here. Ships Ahoy says, Amber, looking to buy some Bach pieces for intermediate viola. Can you suggest a few publications? Would like the books to have good position suggestions if change of position makes sense. Let's see. This poor book is falling apart. Let's see. Here's the front page. Okay. This is what I was just playing today. These are the Bach cello suites, transcribed for viola. There's also the Bach cello suites transcribed for the violin as well. You can find them on imslp.org. That's a magical website. If you're not aware of IMSLP, go there. And they have the music and also transcriptions of many things. These are lovely. These are Bach's 3 da gamba sonatas for viola and harpsichord, or viola and piano. And these are really lovely. The sonatas and partitas, on the other hand, are really, 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 really hard. And I wouldn't recommend starting with those. as I was saying the other day with one of my students and friends that, you know, it's lovely to look at and it's like even artistic to look at. So, it's one of those maybe books that you just want to have on your music stand just to admire, the sonatas and partitas. They're just really hard to play. But don't let me deter you from buying those too. Um, so let's see. Gary Skolkis, thank you so much. I'm so glad to see you here. And he says, nicely done, very meditative. Thank you. Spock, hi there. So good to see you too. Beautiful job, Amber Bravo Live. Live long and prosper. Norm Hayward says, nice, thank you. Nima says, hello, could you please play a little Vivaldi? Oh, that's a great idea for next time. Thank you all so much. So many of you, by the way, have also been here for like 10 years with me, so I really appreciate you sticking around. And hopefully, I'll see you next week for our little music bubble and story time, and that would be lovely. I'll see you then. Bye, you guys. Bye bye.